Hey everybody, it is that day. I am armed with a full box of Sharpies and I've lost count of how many boxes of the newly re-released, no longer out of print Haunting Experiences. And I have a lot of books to sign. Like at least 100? I think it's more than 100. It's a lot.
It's over 100 now.
It's a lot. But I'm signing them and this is going to be fun. And I figured I'd be like, hi, everybody, it's a virtual book signing. Come hang out with me while I sign my name over and over and over and over again. In a shirt that, like, I do not like the sleeves on this, but that's fine. Screw it. You know what? Sleeves are bullshit. Thanks, Marisha. Okay. Yeah, it feels better.
Classic.
Yeah. Roar.
Oh my goodness.
I don't need guns to sign books, but it's been a really busy weekend for book releases and stuff because we've got Haunting Experiences, which was out of print, and we got the rights back, and now it's back in print with a fancy new second edition and some updates and typos that weirdly like passed through the first publisher, the first round. Like a couple that were like, how did they have a typo in this title? How did we not see that for 15 years? What's wrong with us? Anyway, that's fixed. Going back over it was really fun because it got me like excited about Haunting Experiences 2, which has just sort of been sitting on a hard drive for a while now. And for those of you who are doing maybe Valentine's stuff or who aren't doing Valentine's Day stuff at all this weekend, I've got a little vampire journaling game. It's my love letter to the vampire romance genre called Midnight's Kiss. And that came out yesterday. It is just downloadable content. It's a PDF right now. I do have plans for probably a physical copy, but I just wanted to get it in people's hands and let them play with it. It doesn't need to be physical for you to engage. It's something that you can read on your phone and on your tablet, on your computer. So it's a journaling game is basically a solo RPG role-playing game where you are the player character engaging with different prompts for, in this case, a romance with a vampire lover of your choosing. As steamy as you want it to be, as sweet, it has a happy ending because that's what romance is all about. And I think we all need a little bit of happily ever after right now. You can find that on my website. You can find it up on Itch.io, which is a pretty cool site for games of all types. And other than that, and I see that I'm already getting people's names, so I'll start signing and stop talking.
No, don't stop talking.
Well,
that's the fun part.
I cannot. I have learned at like book signings with people standing in front of me, I cannot carry on a conversation and sign my name without misspelling it. Like it just, I start writing what I'm saying. So.
Oh no.
So this first one is going to Melanie.
Yay.
Melanie, just by hook or by crook, you have the very first signed copy of the new edition of Haunting Experiences. Don't worry, I won't make you all sit through me signing the whole 150 plus copies, however many are here. If for no other reason that nobody needs to see me that high on Sharpie for fumes. Like,
that's a fair point.
Yep. Okay, right. Here's a book. Send it into the world.
Okay, so tell people more about.
Well,
let's see.
There's so many things to talk about.
I know.
And I'm still fussing over these sleeves, which, like, sleeves are just this bullshit. I love the datura. Like, I love the design of the shirt, and I hate the build of the shirt. Like, yeah. Anyway.
But let's see. There's all kinds of cool stuff in both Haunting Experiences and Midnight's Kiss.
Well, I mean, one's nonfiction, one's a fiction in a game. Like, so I used to run games at conventions like Origins and Gen Con, like, what is it now, 20 years ago? Oh, yep, at least 20 years ago. I've been out of the game, writing games for quite some time. And this is my first I wrote it all myself. Like I've written bits for other people's games, Ghost Hunters for Onyx Path, for example, most recently. But this is like me getting back into the space of creating my own games. Um, Midnight's Kiss was not the one I thought I'd lead with, but I think it's a really good, sweet uh, representation of the kind of stuff I can do. And also, Kat Rogers did the art, and it's like, oh, it just makes everything look so wonderful. But Haunting Experiences, which I am signing. Do you want me to just sign a couple?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sign a couple. Well,
Is
actually, no, you know what?
okay.
Chat about it.
Okay.
Because I'm still getting.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess I'll talk some more.
Over here.
So, what is Haunting Experiences? When I signed with Llewellyn and was writing various things, like I was also missing writing fiction, specifically like short stories. And at the time, what was selling of my work was nonfiction, which is great. I love research. I love talking about the paranormal. I love recounting people's experiences, recounting my own experiences. And that gave me this idea to do a collection of ghost stories. And the twist, of course, being that they were all real. They were all things that had happened. Investigations from my early years, just sort of like learning the ropes as both a psychic and a paranormal investigator. In a few cases, stories that were shared with me from close friends or family members, including my mom's experience with her haunted violin, which is a really sweet, kind of heartrending story about her music teacher and a violin that he purchased for her, his poor student, who could not afford it herself, and how that got passed along to her. I still have that violin in the museum at Inspiration House, by the way. Doesn't play so well anymore. It got a little battered along the way, but definitely still has the energy. But Haunting Experiences is a collection of short tales of paranormal encounters. And when I first came up with the idea, I was just thinking like it would just be, you know, an anthology of many unrelated things. Again, all of them being I experienced this or like interviewed the witness and found their story credible. But as I collected it and worked on it and did the editing toward the end, I realized it was also like there was an arc to those stories, and what that told was this bigger story of me who honestly grew up with a fairly skeptical mindset. As much as I was raised in a family that was okay with psychic stuff, you know, I was also raised with my great aunt Rita, who had a psychiatric background, who was this weird mix of very devoutly Catholic, but also uh, there was nothing paranormal in her way of looking at the world. It was all psychology. It all came down to psychology or science. Uh, so like I always had her perspective as a counterpoint. Um, Scientific method and like empirical evidence were like really big things for me. The awareness of how our minds can lie to us with pareidolia, the Gestalt effect, like all of these things were things that I carried with me, along with being raised in a family where it was okay to be psychic, which meant like I had this weird conflict. And I'm sure folks listening had the same conflict of, is this a real paranormal experience that I'm having, or is this something that's all in my head? Is this a projection? Am I misinterpreting what's going on? And Haunting Experiences unintentionally tracks Hi Bliss. Like everybody's seen your tail. Please stop. Nope. She wants to sign the books too. Come here, I'm going to hold you. I will love you. I will be like Elmira Fudd.
No. You're paying attention to me now. I'm leaving.
With it. Yep. That's the cat.
She evil.
But Haunting Experiences tells the story of how I personally navigated that conflict and really sort of saw that it wasn't ultimately a conflict at all. That you can have a scientific perspective of the world and you can understand the psychology of how human minds process sensation and experience and memory, and also acknowledge that there are nevertheless experiences that fall outside of our current understanding of these things that do fall under the term paranormal, that it and also that experiences that we perceive in our minds, with our minds, that are in here, don't necessarily mean that they're made up, that they're fantastical. Like, we process all of our perceptions in the world in here. So I have had many people ask me to write an autobiography, and I keep saying I don't think I'm old enough yet.
I am one of those people
Yeah.
who thinks you should.
Well, also, like, there's so much though. Like, haunting experience is probably my most autobiographical work, and probably the closest I have to an autobiography right now. But it doesn't set out to like tell the story of like this is how I got there. It tells that story by accident.
I feel like a haunting experiences too might be even more autobiographical.
Yeah, it could be.
Depending on which stories you included.
I've got so many.
I know.
I mean, so many. I mean, haunting experiences is where anybody who has heard an interview with me at this point has heard the interviewer ask, "What was your first ghost experience?" And I will pretty consistently tell the story about the ghost at the Hinckley Library. Well, haunting experiences is where that full story unfolds, where you get to see, like, through my eyes, what that was like, and also as an adult researching the haunting and going and visiting Rebecca's grave, because that was the name of the person who, as far as we know, still haunts the library in Hinckley. I grew up in a small town in Northeast Ohio that has a famously haunted library, which is no longer a library now, it's their historical society. I believe because since it was an older house, the weight of the books in the library were sinking the foundation, so they had to find. Yeah, it was just, well, it wasn't meant for it. It was an old little house from like the middle 1800s or something. It was not meant to carry that many books, and like it was bowing, and it's just sort of a thing, sort of a mess. All right, I'm signing this one anyway.
There are two names waiting
Oh.
for the next.
Perfect. Give me a name.
They're both for the same order. One.
Oh,
so
okay.
2 copies. One.
I know these names.
Yes, you do.
Lindley
How do you know
and
them?
Zane. Well, at least one of these people has been up to Inspiration House and is an awesome human being, and I love just their outlook on the world, and they've got awesome kids and pets and a partner.
And did you know? I don't know if you know, because so this particular person is. Can I say their name?
Which?
Lindley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I said Lindley.
You did?
Yes.
I didn't hear you.
Wow.
So I am the best at hearing things. But Lindley is also a patron. And I didn't know if you knew that.
I do know that. I
Okay.
keep forgetting to mention that I have a Patreon and that you can pay money to listen to me like live stream every Tuesday.
No, this is
Yeah.
not all you get as a patron. So when I was starting to poke you before to say something about the books, specifically what I was thinking about was not the backstory of how the books or the games came to be. It was the fact that unlike all of your books published before like the last few months, these books have a piece of art in the back, which includes the names of everybody on your Patreon who's currently a supporter. Because that's one of the perks you get. Because every patron helps support you as an author and gives you feedback, sometimes serves as beta readers.
No, that's
Like,
important.
there's a ton
Well, but it's easy to forget as somebody who's like hip deep in the publishing company that like I wouldn't be able to have like the rights back for some of these books and be able to print them and put them in the world if it wasn't for the Patreon. Like, the Patreon has been a game changer for me. Folks subscribe and support me monthly, and there's all sorts of tiers. And it's not like it's, dump $1,000 on me every month so I can just sit around here and roll in books and dice. It's more, this goes into paying my artist, Cat Rogers, and this goes into paying Griff for the work that he does, and this goes into honestly, paying publishers who bought my work in the first place and like getting them to give me that back, because it's actually not as simple as, hey, could I please have my book back? It's really complicated, actually.
And
all right.
So
These two
thank you.
are scribbled upon.
Can you tell people what the range of tiers is? Because you've now thrown out a number that is way above our highest tier.
You will remember, because I think the top tier is 50, right?
Yeah, the top tier is 50 a month.
And you get everything with that one.
You get like 3 online classes every month. You get access to a channel where you and other patrons of that tier can chat with Michelle once a month, once every month. There are weekly live streams that you get access to. I mean, there's so much.
See me sort of like slickly handing it off to Illyria because numbers don't always stick in my head and I don't want to get it wrong.
And that's like
I know it's 50, 25, and
15 and 5.
Okay, 15 and 5 was because I know we'd changed a little bit of it because of the way Patreon fiddles with things.
Well, and even at the $5 a month level, you still get your name in every book that Michelle publishes. You get access to a live stream every week. And at 50, basically you get more of the same, and you get access to a few extra perks like those extra classes. And you're also like the first to get the chance to give feedback on things. So like if Michelle's ever wondering like, hey, what book do you want me to write next? At the $50 a month level, you get like an extra chance to weigh in there.
Well, and the beta readers have been really, really helpful.
Yeah, and they've been drawn from every every level.
Yeah, it's not like you pay me $50 a month and like you're the only person who gets to look at that. Like the community on Discord is everybody who participates, and I really just love the community. Like it's pretty cool to have folks all in one place who aren't just there to like go, dispense wisdom upon us. Like they're people who bring their own background and their own experiences, and to see the conversations and the connections, like the friendships and the support folks have made. Patreon has been a game changer. Like it's pretty darn cool. It's also like I got in on Patreon like long before it was something that I like really worked with well. Early enough that my Patreon is patreon.com/haunted. So that was fun to kind of grab that and be like, mine now, because I'm goofy like that. I mean, I could have maybe done Goth Daddy, but I suspect that would be a little off-putting. If you know exactly how silly I am about how dark I am, like that would make sense. But I don't know that everybody else would get the joke.
Here's a good question for you.
Yeah.
Putting it up on screen.
Is my book at Barnes & Noble yet? With haunting experiences? I'm not sure. I know. So which? I mean, it really depends on which book.
Yeah, that is a good point.
So you probably can still find, even though they're technically out of print, if they are still out in the world, there are probably still first edition copies of Haunting Experiences out there. I think the last of them have sold off of Amazon, but like if you go to Thrift Books and Abe Books and stuff like that, you're still going to find them at bookstores all over the place. But no more of those will be produced. And be aware that they do have like a couple of things that have been updated in them. So this version is self-published, and it's self-published through a print-on-demand distributor that does have the option where things go into bookstores. The thing is in the same way that I have no control over that with publishers, I don't have a whole lot of control over which bookstores it goes into. That's just sort of true across the board for authors. It's really weird. You write the book, somebody else publishes the book, usually somebody else distributes the book, and then you've got the bookstores on the end of that, and there's not a very clear chain of command that comes from the author. So my answer to that would be ask at your local Barnes & Noble if you don't see it on the bookshelves, because they do have the ability to get it. And one truth about brick and mortar bookstores is if you ask them for a book, they are more likely to stock books like that. So if your local bookstore just has a really anemic paranormal section, keep ordering paranormal books through them. They will realize that they have an audience for that. Other things people don't know about brick and mortar, like physical bookstores, is publishers pay to basically rent shelf space at this point. They pay for end caps. Like there's a whole bunch of monetary exchange. It's not simply that books show up and they get put on the shelves. Like there's a lot of weird back end stuff. So to have those books out on the shelves is almost a type of paid marketing. I'll be honest, as a lifelong reader who really held up on a pedestal the whole like writing books and publishing books and like finding out sort of how the sausage is made behind the scenes in the industry. It's not pretty. It's not perfect, but again, the more you ask, same goes for libraries. Your library can get a hold of all of these as well. I know, like me, I want to own the book. I want to be able to like, you know, come back to it. In many cases, I want to be able to like mark things in it, sometimes with post-its, sometimes with actual writing. But not everybody can afford everything equally. That's okay. Libraries work similarly in the sense that if they don't have it on their shelves and you ask for it, that guarantees that now their system, a little bit like an Amazon algorithm, starts to note that this is a topic, that these are books, these are titles, these are authors that people in their area want to see. And I love libraries. Like, libraries kept me sane as a kid. The little town library with its ghost. I was so familiar with the library and its ghost because I spent a lot of time, especially in the summer, in that library.
So if people want to support you in their purchase, what is the best place to buy your books? Well,
if you're talking about support with, you know, how to put the most money in my pocket, because that's a whole another thing too. If you see the cover price and it's like $20 and you buy it at a bookstore, I'm probably getting, I mean, depending on the publisher and things, on the high end, $2 of that. High end. If you go to my website and you buy the book directly from me, the bonus being I get to sign it for you, then more of that money, still not the entire cover price because there's printing costs and shipping and everything, but more of that money goes into my pocket. So if that's something that you are concerned about or interested in doing, not just for me, but for any of the folks and writers that you like and want to support, generally buying directly from them, if that's an option that they offer, is going to support them better and more substantially so that they can create more of the stuff that you like.
So talk a little bit more, because we've got all the signing stuff going on in the background.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like a lot of people coming up on this weekend with Valentine's Day coming up.
Yeah.
Like, maybe this is a good time to, and I know this is like also why you wanted to release Midnight's Kiss right around now, is so that it could be like a gift from people to themselves.
Yeah, well,
if they didn't have other plans for.
Yeah. My wife notwithstanding, I'm not much of a big Valentine's person. I mean, for many years, I was like, rah, 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 Valentine's Day, rah, 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 rah. Freaking like obligatory holidays just cheese me right off. Where it's like you're expected to go buy something for somebody or a card, and for some reason it's seen as an insult if you don't. And then, it just makes it hard for anybody who doesn't have, a date. The number of people who like break up right around this time of the year is just ridiculous. Like, the pressure is dumb. I don't like it. And I wanted to release Midnight's Kiss as sort of a gift of, you know what? We are inundated with this idea of dates and romance and everything around now. So why not take charge of it and have something fun and do it for ourselves? I've had a couple of people say that they were buying it as a gift for their Valentine. And I'm like, cool. Which actually gave me the idea. I'm not doing this right away. It is a solo role-playing game, which means that it is meant for you to be able to do all by yourself. You don't need a game master. You don't need anybody guiding you with it. You don't need a party of people to play with it. It's just for you. The whole idea is to give you enough prompts and enough structure so you can basically write your own story exactly the way you want. So you can write that story where it is hot and heavy, steamy romance. You can write it as sweet and chaste with everything fade to black. You can write it with, whatever like ideal figure you want. It is as inclusive as it possibly can be, which you'll see as you dive into it. It allows for polyamorous pairings. It's not merely a monogamous romance. They're sort of like your imagination is the only limit. And I'm thinking about writing up eventually a, an expansion where it's a duet that you could participate with one partner. So one person plays the vampire, one person plays the person being romance, and you kind of like trade story building back and forth. But that's down the line, mainly if people really like it, because I still don't know. Like, there's been pretty good response, especially in like the role playing community. I've got a lot of contacts there. There's been a lot of excitement, some really, really nice comments. And I'm waiting for reviews to come out and to see those comments a little bit more publicly in print and not just hanging out in my DMs. Because it's always awkward when somebody just DMs you something and is like, "Hey, this is great," and I'm like, "Can I put that on my website? I'm not sure. Can I quote you on that?" Yeah, there's a whole thing to navigate with that, because otherwise I'd have a couple of blurbs from like Charlene Harris, but those were private conversations. Signed book. How do you get a signed book? Well, my website, michellebelanger.com/store, and you can find all of my books as well as probably an overwhelming number of other things, including classes and incense and pictures and just a ton of stuff, because I do lots and lots of things, and really sleep more than it might seem. But if you go to my website and you order a book there, they come signed by me. There is a point on the order where you can tell me specifically, like the name, or whose name this gets signed to, if there's a specific message you want in the book. Otherwise, you get what I'm feeling like writing in the book that day along with my name. I always write something. It feels, I don't know, it feels sort of like empty to me to just simply scribble my name on something. I might do that on a photo because I don't have a lot of space in most cases, but there's always some little message that I write in a book to someone, even if I don't have your name. So signed books on my website right now. That's the only place to get them, because I have not been out of the house for 2 years, except to like maybe the grocery store. And even then we do mostly pickup.
So related.
Okay, I can't say that I've not completely been, because there was one filming thing that, like, really, I don't leave the house. I haven't been to conventions. Like, there's just not been a lot of travel because I'm kind of high risk.
It's so funny. You're so psychic, because this question popped up just before you started talking about that.
Okay.
I'm putting it on screen now.
How do people meet up with me in person? Right now, you don't. I was born with a heart defect. I had multiple surgeries, including 2 open heart surgeries before the age of 5. And because of the cardiovascular problems and clotting and stuff that is associated with COVID and long COVID, I have got to be exceedingly careful, and just sort of avoid any possible exposure to it. So I'm pretty much, I'm a recluse to begin with. I like my books. I don't know if you noticed with the bookshelves in the background. I read, I write, I game. So I'm kind of content here anyway. But right now, for the foreseeable future, with how things are, you're not going to see me at conventions. You're not going to see me in person doing a book signing.
Where are people going to see you?
Well, you're going to see me live streaming here occasionally. You're going to see me, I don't know when it will come out, but the last thing I filmed was with Kesha, who has a paranormal show coming out. Yes, that Kesha. And I got to play with dead things with Kesha on an episode, and I don't know if I can say any more than that, but it was fun.
And where's the best people for best place for people to like find more of you online?
Well,
I'm angling you to mention the Patreon again.
Oh, okay.
That's like
you can tell one of us has a business degree, right? It's not this one.
No,
I don't mean
legitimately curious. Like, the only way people find out about this is if you talk about it.
Yeah,
Nobody else is
places you can see me are, Portals to Hell and Kesha's thing, which I still don't know the title of that. It doesn't matter. There was a Nostradamus Prophecies series that I did. There's a bunch of stuff on Discovery Plus and Travel Channel. I think some places have been airing old reruns of Paranormal State, which is a blast from the past, and please excuse some of the really bad haircuts. That was the whole thing. And mostly if you want to see more of me right now live, like leading you in a guided meditation, teaching classes on psychic development, or honestly just shooting the shit, that would be my Patreon, which is again patreon.com/haunted. It is subscription. There's a bunch of different options, and it's a lot more than just having me talk at you. I'm also pretty present on Twitter. I will admit that I'm usually not very active on Facebook. Don't like the interface quite as much, and yeah, just it's kind of a lot lately. Like, just it's not as fun. Twitter, I've got a little bit. I don't know. They got me using Twitter with Paranormal State, and I think I took to it, and it was like the first social media that I really felt comfortable with after Live Journal. Let me date myself a little. Uh, oh, did you know I found my MySpace account? It still exists.
Oh my gosh.
I can't log into it, but pictures are still up there. Gifts with health. Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of talk about this idea of like a near-death experience, maybe opening you up to being more psychic. In my case, what I can say is this: on both my grandmother and my grandfather's side of the family, I know that there is a family tradition of gifts. I don't know much about my father's side, so I can't speak to that. But on my mother's side, definitely, both her mother and her father, like there's whole family histories of being gifted. So I think I kind of would have come into the world with some of these, but I also admit that being confronted, like talking openly about death and mortality and what comes after, from the time I could talk, because I was not expected. My life expectancy was 5. There was a very slim chance. It was experimental surgery. Like, people hadn't survived this surgery at this time in the early 70s. We talked about death a lot. Like, it was just sort of a part of life. And in that respect, I think I've always walked with one foot in this world and one foot in that world. And if you know anything about the mythology of other cultures and other religions, that's sort of the recipe for being a spirit talker, a spirit walker, where you are neither of this world nor that one. And that gives you a unique perspective for navigating them both. So yeah, there's something there. It's kind of a neat something. Do I have more things to sign?
Yeah, we've got the next one can be not personalized,
Okay.
just signed.
All right.
Request a name.
From Joseph Grimm, any advice for a newly formed paranormal team? I mean, be real, first of all, with one another. Communicate. Don't be afraid to question one another, not in like a mean way, but like check in with one another. I guess, somebody who's worked with the Paranormal Research Society, some groups before that, like Nick Ryder's Avalon Foundation, with Katrina and Jack, and honestly a bunch of people in between. What seems to work, both from what I've experienced and observed, is camaraderie, honest communication, a willingness to fail, to be wrong with your theories and your experiences, but to talk about them and try them anyway, a willingness to support one another through that experimentation, having a strong enough bond of trust that you can question one another and yourselves and not feel like that's an attack, and knowing that everybody in that group has your back if things get really hairy. Like, that trust is important. So be friends, above all else, and support one another. And to me, that makes the best team in any direction. Okay, signing a book. Stopping talking, so I'm not just like signing whatever I am currently saying on this. one. Looking at the front page of this with like the people who blurbed the book and realizing that one of them is Jeff Belanger, the founder of Ghost Village, and the number of people who are like, is that your brother? And I'm like, no. Is that your husband? No. Are you related? Probably not. Will we joke about being related? You betcha.
Is it inside the front cover of this book that you're not related? Uh-huh.
Wait, I didn't have enough room.
Gotcha. It's hard to do more than one thing at a time.
Uh-huh. Especially when it involves writing.
And talking.
Two very different parts of my brain.
Ozzy, we're not going to eat this right now.
He'll try.
He will. He thinks this is only for him. You ridiculous beastie.
Here's that. I'm
Thank you.
going to grab the enormous cat.
Enormous
Look at this.
cat.
Oh,
Oh,
he just,
no.
oh, I'm sorry, baby.
Does not like the grabbing.
I'm sorry. Here, go. Ah.
Bad. Bad. Oh, no.
Sorry, bud. I just wanted the world to see your enormity. All 20 pounds of you, you glorious beast.
So cute.
Oh.
I got one more question for the live stream for you.
Okay.
And then we'll move on to just signing books. Here it is.
Okay.
Oh, that's not it. Off by one because people are commenting so quick.
How did I refine my gift? The first step for me was to ask a lot of questions about it, and really dig into human psychology, how perception works, how memory works, and understand sort of the territory inside my head. Like, how do I experience normal perceptions versus what seem to be paranormal perceptions? I did a lot of journaling. I did a lot of note taking. I did a lot of sort of ad hoc field experiments. You know, I'm not going to say that they're laboratory experiments because there's no way to control all of the variables, but, you know, going to different places and just sort of like testing the limits and testing myself. And I am continuously building and honing and refining the gift. One of the reasons I use the blindfold on a lot of the TV shows is that's the best technique I've learned for limiting certain variables in what always amounts to kind of like a field experiment. I view every reading that I do, every walkthrough, as another opportunity to experiment with the boundaries of what I can do, and how I can tell what it feels like to have a verifiable perception. I always go into that work with this sort of open-handed mindset. And by open-handed, I mean no expectation of success, no fear of failure, just simply open to the experience in the moment. Have that experience as immediately and genuinely as possible, report it as much as I can in a medium that is recorded. And then when I'm done, step back from it and then apply my analytical, my critical brain. It's very similar to the process I use when I'm creating, when I'm writing, because in the moment, the creative moment of making a story, there's a certain flow state, a certain immediate now that you kind of have to sink into if you really want the creativity to flow. But that's not how you finish a book. There's a next step where you always have to step back and look at what came out and analyze it and refine it and polish it. And the main difference is in writing, you are adding or taking things away in that analytical stage as you're like, look at like, is this right? Is this wrong? How does this look? In the psychic stage, like for that process, you don't want to remove pieces. You don't want to change what you experienced because you run the risk of kind of backwards editing something in order to fit a bias. Like you don't want to overinterpret what you experienced, but you do want to look at the bigger picture of why perhaps you experienced that and understand the sort of the larger picture in which you had that experience. How were you feeling that day? What was going on in the world? Who was around you? Have you had different types of experiences specifically when that person is around you? I bring that one up because something we've noticed since the Paranormal State days, when Katrina Weidman is on a case, it is really common for me to have dreams about it. Sometimes before I even know I'm going to be called in on the case, which is trippy. Uh, and I wouldn't have like proof of that if I didn't also keep like dream journals. So it's important to catalog, to record, to archive, to experience in the moment, and then step back and ask a lot of questions so you understand it from as many different perspectives as possible.
All right. Anything else you want to say to people before we sign off and really dig into all these signings and cat wrangling and orders?
Oh yeah, there's
There's a lot.
let me give you an idea. Like I am staring down a lot of books. There's so many boxes over there. Well, haunting experiences, you can add to my work today, and I wouldn't complain. If you want to pick up copies of haunting experiences through my website right now, if the idea of a sweet little vampire romance for Valentine's Day appeals, or if you're just curious what the hell a journaling game is, Midnight's Kiss is available on my website. It's also available on Itch.io, which is itch.io.com. It's a gaming distributor, and I'm really happy with it. I think it's worth the like $6.99 just for Cat Rogers' art, which is
it is
fucking
so
amazing.
Beautiful. Oh, so pretty.
And I might live stream a little bit later because I have got a lot of work ahead of me and it's boring. But
we're gonna be here.
Yeah, we're gonna be here for a while. Otherwise, hang in there, stay safe. Depending on what part of the world you're in, stay warm or stay cool or stay dry. Or, stay out of the high winds or all of the other stuff. Like, it's kind of wild out there right now. And just have a good afternoon.